How are you guys? Yeah, you came for the free food and the awesome company, right? Free information. Free information. City. I'm okay, so close. Diamond Bar. Diamond Bar? Okay, OC? I'm from OC. Okay. Grew up there? No. Yeah, no way. I drive back every Sunday morning. Drive to soccer team. And yeah, we're excited. Every year, this is the third year we do this, so I'm going to do a recap of how long we've been doing this and why it's so much valuable thing for you guys are coming out. So we're doing a live stream too. Stay at home, but I'm glad that you're here to have a mixed audience. Was it everything you thought it would be? What? Very end of that. Was it everything you thought? That's finished. Try to begin. Alright. Great. You know what you're gonna get though. So.
Yeah, they're very consistent.
That noise will go every with the traffic, right?
Yeah,
It's the other one, the same thing happens.
The subway stop right there, and then just took subway.
That one was too big.
Yeah, it's actually, yeah. Like, so we're gonna be like, thank you. Oh, 10 minutes, an hour.
I'm gonna bring you special
And yeah, special ed, probably questions on like, you know, what are the big CMOs, how do they start? You can give a history of like, you know, what your experience been as a teacher here or as an administrator, but as you've seen the charter movement take off, and like districts and challenges and opportunities, and I'm sure people will ask specific questions about contracts and unions and this and that. Pretty important.
Yeah, I just thought
Quickly, right?
last night about.
Because usually they're not happy. Careful, we have a hot mic, so.
I spoke to her. She's better now.
Not personal, that's what I want to tell her.
I
It's
know.
not a reflection of your leadership. You know? They're taking it that way.
Yeah. That's what I told her.
Huh? I just moved it.
Whoa!
So I'm not gonna mute yours, Chau. And then you can see the PowerPoint, okay?
Yeah.
Trash. Last week we had people show up and there wasn't an event. I was like, we can talk.
Oh, people should.
So, yeah, so people showed up and were like, I didn't see the email, this and that. I'm like,
Oh, damn.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. I saw Derrick randomly in Sacramento.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
CCSA?
Yeah.
No.
I thought so too, and I was like, what are you doing? And we're gonna get some, yeah, we're gonna get a little bit of light in our face, but, yeah. Tune in. I'm trying to see how many viewers so far. We're just probably
Yeah,
still loading.
I was up there for the Association for California School Administrators
Yeah.
Legislative Action Day.
Hmm.
So we got
Just
to-
one day?
It was a 2-day process, but we only met with legislators one day.
Okay.
Their staffs.
Receptive?
Yeah, you know, we had some advocacy points.
Yeah, come in a little tighter here.
Just like the students, always trying to sit in the back.
We're the cool kids.
Better not see you guys on your cell phones back there, okay? We were at the charter school, well, I was at the California Charter School Association, like, big meet conference where everybody from the charter world in California, which has the most charters in the country, meet and like do sessions and talk about challenges and ways to like work around those challenges. And so I was there talking to a lot of our principals and a lot of people really excited about core members and excited about potentially hiring you and asking me how many we're gonna get because there's so much need out there. So it was definitely like energizing to come back now and say like, okay, we need to get to work. There's so many people that need us. We're just gonna keep holding on for a little bit. It's 5:30 now. If you're joining us via live stream, thank you so much. Hold tight. We're gonna wait about 5 minutes until more people come join us. I'm sure people are logging in. It's first time on Ustream, so they're figuring out kind of how to go about navigating the site and making sure that they are able to ask questions via the chat box and all those things. So if anyone's having any technical issues and you can hear me, just type into the text box, and Chelsea is monitoring that text box. If not, you can
Hey.
you can also email Chelsea or myself, and we'll make sure to help walk you through the process. But hold on tight. So we're also recording this, so welcome. I want to let everyone know that anything you say will be recorded, because I think full disclosure, I want everyone to know that there is a recording going on. That shouldn't scare you away from saying anything. It's just more of like, hey, I would want to know if my voice is being recorded. Cool.
And broadcast.
Yeah, and broadcast across the country. Government agencies are listening in.
Nice.
Can I, as a male, say that I'm like really like it's interesting that 3 males showed up today, which in education first and foremost it's hard to find a lot of males. So I know that we usually don't say, oh yay, males are here, like that's such a great thing. But I'm happy to see 3 male teachers are going to be in the region. That's awesome. So yeah, so there's gonna be a lot of
male teachers.
There's more.
yeah. You 3 hold the fort down. Represent for our gender now. That's so funny. But yeah, so cool. We're just gonna wait a little bit. Where are you coming from?
I just came in from Northern California earlier this morning.
You flew in for this event?
I took the freaking bus. Sorry, I shouldn't say freaking. I took the bus and it broke down, and then we had to wait for another bus. It was in the middle of the night. It was crazy.
Oh, that's horrible.
No, but you didn't just come for this event.
Of course.
Come on.
No.
So now we have to blow. I mean, now it has to be the best event ever. Step your game up, Derrick. I mean, this has got to be amazing. No, that's funny.
I'm leaving the country over the weekend, so
Oh, wow.
I came in today so I could do this. And then,
You're coming back, right?
yeah.
Okay. We need you here. Don't leave and not come back.
Yeah.
Where are you going?
I'm going to Mexico City.
Okay.
Yeah.
What brings you there?
I had originally gotten a position with the National Ballet Company of Mexico. So, although I can't really set a contract, I'm just going to go and make class anyways. I just got my green card after 25 years. So
Wow,
like,
congrats.
I'm just going to go and do some, soul searching, I guess.
Yeah.
Take advantage of the fact that I can now leave the country.
Yeah. Well, leaving the country was never the problem. It's coming back that was the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah. I had a green card for 10 years. So
Yeah.
I remember when my family first got it. I think I was 10 years old,
Oh, okay.
and my mom's like, "We're going to Argentina like next week." I'm like,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah, after I
liberating.
got it, I went like for a day, like just because I could now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's liberating. It's like
Yeah, definitely liberating.
and I can speak for myself. I felt very American for a long time,
Yeah.
but like that was like a huge missing piece of like feeling that identity or
Yeah,
like really
sure.
relating to it was the fact that like legally speaking, I was not counted
Yeah,
at all.
we're
So,
not human.
yeah, we're still kind of aliens, right?
Yep.
So congratulations. Well,
Thanks.
that's a big thing.
Thanks.
So
Yeah,
sweet.
it was a crazy feeling, and it was a lengthy process for sure.
I bet. I bet. Yeah, a lot of money too.
A lot
Spent.
of money. Yeah.
Well, proud of you. Glad that you're able to do that. I'm sure you're going to be able to, your perspective will help a lot of students in
Yeah.
schools that are facing similar things or thinking about similar things. So,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Especially LA.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yep.
Okay. Yes.
All right. So, I guess we'll just get started here. We're about 5:35. I'm going to take off my sweater. It's getting a little hot for my liking. But wanted to, first of all, thank you guys for joining us via live stream. We have a few folks in the room here joining us in person as well. Really happy to see your faces. It's making our work even that much more real for us who sit in this office every day trying to work hard to prepare you guys and to give you all the necessary information so that we can get you in a classroom full of kids and doing great things. And so it's really great when we get to actually see your faces in real life. Because I think I can speak for myself, but I'm sure I'm speaking for my team, that it really energizes us and gets us kind of focusing on what we're doing here and why we're doing it. So without further ado, thank you for joining us again via live stream. We have done this for now 3 years. Really excited. Derrick Chau, who I'm going to introduce in a minute, is so gracious. He accepts this offer every year, and he comes out and really does a really great job letting you guys know about the world that you're about to enter as far as where you're going to teach here in LA. Los Angeles is very different from other regions, and so it's really important that you have a geographical or a site-specific kind of session like this to let you know what you're about to walk into. I taught in Philadelphia. I was a 2009 Philadelphia Corps member, taught high school English and journalism. Going into Philly, knew nothing about Philadelphia politics and schools and community. Leaving Philly, I obviously knew a lot, but I would have loved to have had an event like this to kind of give me a heads up on, like what was I about to walk into? I went to a traditional K-12, didn't know much about charter schools, had a lot of misinformation. I'm sure you guys are possibly feeling the same thing. So today should hopefully clarify some things, but I wanted to start off with a bit of a background on where we're at in Los Angeles and give you kind of an idea of how the charter movement started, and then Derrick's going to go a little bit more in depth. We're going to open it up. Hopefully it's a dialogue that we have both online and here in person. And so if you have a question online at any point, just write it into the text box. There should be a text box on the right-hand side of this stream. I have Chelsea managing the text machine over there, and she's going to be writing your questions down on a post-it note and then handing it over to me so that I can ask Derrick and we can engage in that conversation. So hopefully you understand everything that's happening today. I know this is exciting. Well, I mean, I'm semi from the internet generation, and so it's really cool that we're able to send this out across the country and have you guys all participate, even if you're not physically here in person. So without further ado, if Malin can help me out with the next slide. I know it's kind of difficult to see, but I'm going to try my best to move my head, and we'll move this a little higher so you can see. Just going over the agenda. I already welcomed you, so I hope you feel welcomed. We're going to go over a little bit of background information here in the region, and then Derrick Chau will present and engage in that conversation. So if you can go to the next slide. I wanted to start off with letting you know that we in Los Angeles place in any school that we deem or determine as a high-need school and is a public school. Now, charters and district schools are both charter schools, and we'll go into a little bit more about that in a bit. But I wanted you to know that we are placing in district schools. Last year, we placed a large percentage of our core in LA Unified, and a smaller percentage, but a mighty presence in Linwood Unified, and this is the 3rd year that we're placing in Linwood Unified, and we're really happy about that partnership. And LA Unified has the highest of the highest need schools, and so we're really much invested and happy to be partnering with LA Unified as well. And a new site that we're targeting this year is actually really exciting for me because I was a student in Santa Ana Unified, and we are really close to hopefully locking in a partnership with them. And you'll get updates about that in the future. I know some core members out there are from Orange County and would be more than happy to work in their own community. So we'll make sure to communicate updates as soon as we get them. So just so you know, these are the 2 that we currently partner with and a target for next year. So excited about that. You just scroll down. Yeah. Wanted to show this graphic because I think it just kind of lets you know about how fast charter school growth has risen here in California. As you can see, in 1994, we had a small batch of about 31 charter schools in the state of California. And now if you go to 2014, you'll notice that we have about over 1,100 charter schools. I was just at the Charter School Association Conference, California Charter School Association Conference in Sacramento, and you can really, I got to visualize what that meant. There were so many people there, so many school leaders, teachers, principals, organizations that partner with these schools, and I got to really see what 1,100 schools means. And that means that 20% of the population, student population in California, or is it LA Unified? Is it 20% charter? I believe it was 20% charter in LA Unified. So LA Unified grants charters in LA for the most part, and about 20% of the student population attend charter schools. So 80% still attend the traditional LA Unified school, but there are 20% that go to charter school. And there are over 260 charter schools that are currently operating in the city limits of LA or LA Unified. So if you think about it as the amount of students that's serving statewide, it's 520,000 students that are being served by a charter school in LA. In California, I'm sorry. So that should give you an idea of like the growth and the current landscape. Definitely want to go to the next slide and let you know about our large CMOs. A CMO is a charter management organization. So these are operators that operate multiple schools under the flagship name. So, for example, these are the 4 large CMOs that we partner with in Los Angeles. And so if you get a chance to Google them later, I'm sure you've had some information. You will continue to get information about these schools. But, so Alliance College Ready Public Schools is one of those networks that operates nearly 27 schools and counting. These schools are usually 400 or 500 students in population, so you could do the math there. It's quite a bit of students. Green Dot Public Schools operates over 20 schools as well. And then we have ISEF that operates a smaller batch. I think it's about 10 schools. And then PUC, the Partnership to Uplift Communities network that mostly has schools in the Valley. And they also have a large number of schools that they operate. So wanted to paint a picture of where we place district-wide, also paint a picture of where we place in our large CMO content, and also know that there are schools that are individual charter schools that we place in as well that aren't part of a CMO. They are just like one single charter or 1 or 2 charter schools. So know that there's like different classifications and words that we're going to use when we call these schools out, but those are the very basic definitions. All right, so I want to take a time to introduce. He's really a mentor of mine. I've worked with him even before I worked at Teach for America. We both worked at Alliance College Ready Public Schools. Derrick has a lot of experience, as you can see in his resume or pseudo resume here that we have on the board. He has both the education and the work experience to really know what he's talking about. He's worked as a teacher. He's a Teach for America alum. He's worked as a teacher, a principal, a leader of principals at both the charter and the district level. And for the past 3 years, he's worked at LA Unified. And he's really the person who's in charge of leading principal and teacher professional development. And he is overseeing 7 high schools in LA Unified. And he's doing amazing work. So we're really happy to welcome him here today. And he will roll over into the picture, and so you can see who I'm talking about. But I wanted to kind of, I know he's a little camera shy because of the light, but we'll get that going in a second, and then we're gonna let him kind of give you a bit of his background, on Los Angeles context, and then go right into questions. We want this to be a dialogue, a conversation we have with both the folks in the room and the folks that are participating via live stream. So I think we're good with the PowerPoint. We'll probably shut off the camera, and then that way we can get the image here. So if you can turn off the power, that'd be awesome. All right, cool.
I actually have my notes.
Oh, well, great.
So
look at you came prepared.
Yes.
A+, you get a sticker. So is this better?
Yes.
Right? Now we have a good light on you, and the image looks good. I'm looking at the monitor right now. So, so I guess start us off with talk a little bit about, I know that I went through the growth that has happened in California with charter schools and kind of but I didn't speak a lot about the district context here, and that since you're currently working here, maybe you can give us a bit of an idea of where you guys have been district-wide, where you guys are currently at, and then where we're hoping to go in the future, and then you can take this conversation anywhere you want, and then wherever in the future.
Okay. I don't know what you said. I'll look at you.
Let's look at where.
Yes.
This is new, guys. This is fresh. So if we're not looking at the camera, it's because we're rookies, okay?
Yes.
So don't get mad at us.
So where the district is at now, we're in the news a lot. LA Unified is the second largest district in the country, and so LA Times, it makes national news when anything happens in LA. And in a lot of ways, LA Unified drives a lot of the statewide policies in California because we're so large. So if I think off the top of my head in terms of what are the things that people are probably seeing if you were to Google LA Unified right now in the news. One is we are going through some transitions because we are moving. We just had one superintendent leave, Dr. Dacey, John Dacey, and an interim superintendent, although he's not really, he doesn't like being called interim, but he is. Ramon Cortines is now with the district.
And why do you say he doesn't like? Give a bit of context on why.
Well, he's actually, his title is actually superintendent. He was voted in by the board unanimously.
Okay, and he was superintendent in the past.
And he used to be superintendent two times in the past.
Okay.
Actually. So this is his third time coming back to the district. So when Dr. Dacey, about 3 years ago, took over at the district, he reorganized the district into 5 local regions because LA Unified is pretty unique because we're a large district, but not just in the number of students, but also geographically. You can drive probably an hour in one direction, going 60 miles an hour on the freeway, and still not be outside of LA Unified from one end to the other. So it's pretty large geographically. So due to that geographic kind of spread, we've needed to divide the LA Unified into smaller local districts.
How many schools is that?
Each school in the 5 that currently exist are about 100 schools each. So you're looking at about 100,000 students per local district currently. So each one alone would be one of the larger districts in the country. And so within each local district, there's a separate superintendent, separate instructional directors who supervise the schools, like me, and then also a whole infrastructure of instructional coordinators, operational coordinators who support the schools. Within the central office at LA Unified, of course, there's sort of the operations side of things in terms of HR and operations and facilities and all of those people. But for the most part, instructional directors in my role who supervise the principals at each school are essentially the face of the district at most schools because we're the ones who are at the schools the most, and we're the ones who are able to develop the relationships with the principals and with the staff as well.
Okay, cool. And so you gave a brief kind of, so your day-to-day interactions with principals is you observe, you go to schools, you observe kind of what's going on in the school, you talk to principals about what kind of things are they looking to seek guidance?
A lot of my role has been in focusing on coaching the principals in terms of their own development, as well as guiding the schools instructionally, talking about professional development, talking about budget, talking about for high schools, the matrix and what courses are they offering, how are they preparing students for the KC interventions. But a lot of the work recently has been focused on developing the instructional leadership teams in schools. So in the old days, there might have been a principal or an assistant principal who was sort of making all the decisions about instruction, what's going to happen in professional development. But what we've tried to transition the schools into is more of an instructional leadership team model where there are maybe groups of teachers and coordinators and counselors, as well as the administrators, who are making the decisions about the schools. So you can think of it as almost sort of like the board of the school. I mean, they're the ones who should be making the decisions about the school. What professional development are they offering, but also learning about things ahead of everybody else so that they can make decisions about how does this make sense for our school. So something like the Common Core, which is a big push right now in the state of California.
Tell us a little bit more about what Common Core is.
So the Common Core standards are a new set of standards that our state adopted, and it is pretty controversial. We may get 1 or 2 questions about that from people from other states especially, but and it is in the news a lot because it's become a very political issue. But when it comes down to it, the old state standards, the California state standards that were adopted in 1990, I think it was a while ago. The old standards were very focused on content knowledge. What are students supposed to know? And the tests were designed accordingly. The California standards tests were all multiple choice, even the English one. For the English California standards tests, the students didn't have to do any writing. It was all multiple choice. So teachers and students were much more focused on, what do I need to know for this test? Maybe they weren't as focused on some of the skills that students need to be really prepared for college. So the Common Core state standards were developed by a nonprofit group and were offered up to states to adopt. Yes, there was some political controversy over how states adopted them and why they adopted them. Some of it was tied to federal funding, but each state legislature and each each Department of Education had to decide on their own whether or not they would adopt the Common Core state standards. It's not a national initiative, it's just something that the states each have to vote on. And each state has the right to also change those standards. So for the California state standards, the new ones that have been adopted, California and their state board has convened many different public meetings with teachers and administrators and parents to actually review the standards and to add to them or remove things that they didn't feel were necessary for the state of California. So in most instances, they've added a lot to them that were maybe missing in the state standards, in the Common Core standards, but we felt that as a state, there were some pieces that we wanted to add that were maybe part of the old standards also. So within our school, with our schools and LA Unified, like most districts in the state, we've been in the process of transitioning teachers and administrators and students into these new standards over the past 3 years. So about 3 years ago in LA Unified, we started sharing some professional development just about building awareness of what the Common Core standards were, what they looked like, what the shifts were as well. And then last year, we started really working with teachers and schools on actually implementing them in the classroom. And so the Common Core standards are significantly different than the old standards because the Common Core standards focus a lot more on building students' skills. Because what we were seeing when students went off to college was students might have been proficient on the California standards tests, but they still couldn't think critically. They couldn't.
They weren't college ready.
They weren't college ready, and that played out another standard in the college entrance exams. So the Cal States have required writing and math exams that students have to take in order to not have to take remedial courses when they go to college. Well, what we were seeing is that the percentage of students who were passing those remedial exams, those kind of entrance exams, was somewhere in the neighborhood of 10%.
So 90% of the students were taking remedial classes in college.
Right.
Can I just say I was one of those students, full disclosure, that did not pass the math entrance exam at the Cal States, and like I had no idea I wasn't ready for college.
Right.
And I spent my first year, my freshman year, spending money on a class that I wasn't going to count for any credits, and it was also kind of like a rude awakening that I wasn't college ready, and I had gone to what I thought was like a really good school. And that was happening to me at a really good school, quote unquote, and I can't imagine like what that means for 90% of students coming out of it. So I'm glad to hear that there's been some reaction to that and like some change.
Yeah. And so that's how the Common Core standards are designed to actually focus students a lot more on being prepared for the real world, really, the college and career readiness standards. And so students are really being asked to read a lot more nonfiction texts because what we found is that when students go to college and when you get a job, most of the text that you read is actually nonfiction text. It's manuals, it's instructions, it's informational text. It's not actually literature that most of the English teachers in high school were teaching, and that none of the subject area instructors, or very few of the subject area instructors, were actually teaching students how to read that informational text in science and history and math and whatnot, because they were busy teaching them the content knowledge that students needed for the exams. So a lot of the Common Core standards is really a change in the way, not just in what teachers are being asked to teach, but also how they're teaching. There's an expectation that teachers are focusing a lot more on helping students build the skills to be able to access the text on their own, to be able to justify and explain the reasoning when it comes to math, not just know the algorithm and solve the problem.
Yeah.
And so that's a really big shift, and that's definitely something that for those of you who are obviously going into the classroom and as new core members, it's something that you'll really need to be acutely aware of, because you are actually going through training programs and experiencing a lot of preparation that a lot of the existing teachers didn't get.
So in one way it's good and bad, right? So it's good because you're fresh and new and don't know anything previous to this, right? So there's no like, oh man, I really like the old way we did things. It's like a new thing, but it's also kind of scary because people are figuring this out as you are doing it. So you're like almost like a guinea pig in a sense, because no one really has the answers on how to go about this. So.
And connected to that also is the fact that, for the past year, we haven't had the regular state standardized exams either. They've been put on hold.
And there's been no scores.
And there have been no
schools. So we don't know how schools are performing.
Right. And so this school year, actually, starting May 15th, I believe, or April 15th, sorry, all of our schools will be starting to use the new state standardized exam, the Smarter Balance Assessments. The Smarter Balance Assessments Consortium is a nonprofit group that is supported by many states. You can look them up on a website and you'll see all the states that are bought into them. The great thing about Common Core standards is that they're being adopted by many states, and many of those states are also choosing the Smarter Balance Assessments as their assessment system. And all of it's online. All of it's going to be, there's going to be places for students to actually write paragraphs, short answers, or essays, to even create things, create a presentation or a brochure or a PowerPoint, or write an essay or write a report and actually submit that as part of their state standardized exams.
And so, part of the, sorry to interrupt,
yeah.
Part of the Common Core idea too is how to, like in the past, we've had states with different systems, and so when California students on average were scoring in whatever percentile or whatever on the API, which is the performance index, we couldn't compare it to anyone else really because our state had completely different standards. Whereas with Common Core, it's supposed to make it so that there's like a homogenous group that you can say like, hey, California is performing here and Virginia is performing here. So it'll just make for more cohesive, common rubrics so that we can kind of see where we're at in comparison. And so if there are states that are scoring off the charts with similar populations of kids, what are they doing that's so great so that we can adopt those things? So it just makes for more synergy and I think it pushes the profession.
Definitely. And the state governor and the state board of education just decided that for this school year, the tests that are being given in April, starting in April, they won't actually count towards accountability for the schools. So API is going to be not used this school year. So the academic performance index was a number that schools were given as a rating based on their test scores. And we haven't had that for the past few years because we haven't been given the state tests, the California standards tests. And this year was supposed to be the first year where we had a new academic performance index, but they've actually put that on hold. So this year, it's almost like a baseline year where schools will be able to give the tests, get their scores, but not be held accountable because it's the first year.
But have something. And just so you know, audience in here and audience back in their comfort of their home, we at Teach for America, we've gone over this, and I'm sure you have information, but we place in the highest need schools, and so how we gauge that is we use that number, the API number, as well as free and reduced lunch percentage to gauge kind of poverty and kind of where we want to be in relation to that, because we are in place to serve the highest need kids. And so I would love to, I know that you had some more to say, but I want to transition, make sure we touch upon everything, and we have a limited amount of time, but want you to see if you can kind of give us a little bit about, since we are placed in the highest need schools, and you currently work overseeing ISEC, which is for those, and I'm sure I want you to explain what ISEC is, and where are our core members, if they're placed in districts, most likely to teach? What does that school look like? What are some of the challenges, opportunities? And then we'll shift over and we'll talk a little bit about charter, but I would love to kind of hear that out.
Sure. So currently I work in the Intensive Support and Innovation Center, so it's one of the local districts in LA Unified. So there's North, East, Southwest, and then the Intensive Support and Innovation Center that, so we have the schools that are the lowest performing and also some of the pilot schools that have a little bit more autonomy as well. And so when I think of core members going to work in LA Unified, and they have worked in a lot of the schools that I support, the types of schools that our core members are going to go to may vary significantly. So we still have large comprehensive high schools, 1,500 to 2,500 students on the campus. We don't have very many year-round schools anymore. Honestly, there's only one year-round school in all of LA Unified right now. That's Bell High School. But all of our other schools are on a regular calendar. And so some of our high schools are very large, and middle schools are very, very large still. But we also have been building a lot of schools in the past 10 years. And so with that construction boom through facilities bonds that we received, a lot of the newly constructed sites for our schools, our high schools and our middle schools, actually were designed for smaller schools to share the same campus. And so we have quite a few schools. A lot of our newer schools actually may have 3 to 5 different high schools on the same campus. They're in separate buildings usually, but they're on the same campus. There are a lot of advantages to that. Obviously, students are able to get a small school environment, but still be able to compete in a large sort of comprehensive high school athletic program and be a part of a large school environment. But that's sort of a new development, and when people think of coming in to Teach for America and working in LA Unified, you probably picture what I pictured when I went to work in Long Beach, was working in a 4,000 student school and being large and not knowing everybody. Yeah. And it really depends on where your placement is. We have a lot of schools that are actually very small, 300 or 500 students. Yeah.
And that was influenced. Charters have influenced that a bit, right? Because charters, that's what they claim that they have smaller schools, and right. Many of them do, and so that personalized learning environment, I guess, they've taken things that have worked in charters and brought them over to districts. So those are some of the benefits, and I think we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But I've noticed that there are large schools like Sotomayor campus that has multiple schools in one school. So that's interesting.
Right. And that the size of the school will also dictate kind of your experience as a teacher too. Because the size of some of my teaching staffs, I support 7 small high schools, so each one has about 500 students. You're looking about 25 teachers on that campus, not very many. Whereas I've supervised large comprehensive high schools, like Monroe High School, and that has 2,500 students, and you're looking at a couple hundred teachers on the campus.
Wow.
And so it really does change, and it'll vary depending on where the placements are for our teachers and the core members.
And so the experience, though, from day to day, what are some of the challenges? And so if I'm a core member and I'm thinking, wow, I don't know a lot about charter schools. I went to a district school, but I maybe went to a district school that's very different or very similar. Kind of what's a day-to-day life of a teacher at a district school, and some of the things that are interesting and exciting, some of the challenges that might exist in these schools, and what does it mean when we say highest need of the highest need?
Right.
Realistic picture here.
Okay, I think the experience of teachers will depend on the size of their school. It really does depend. So if I'm a regular teacher, I think back to when I was teaching at Long Beach Jordan High School, 3,000, 4,000 kids on the campus. It can be a very lonely experience because you're mainly working with just your department. You'll know the other teachers in your department. There might be a few other core members at the site as well. Your typical day is going to be rolling into school at 7 a.m., going to your class, signing in at the office, checking your mail, see if there's any handouts, literally going to your classroom, setting up the classroom, maybe doing some grading, and then preparing the classroom for the typical day of lessons that are taught. Most schools are on a regular bell schedule or something similar. Each school within LA Unified is maybe on a different bell schedule. The schools have the autonomy to choose their own bell schedule. So some schools, they might have a bell schedule which is a block schedule, which means that you only see half of your classes each day, every other day.
Okay.
And other schools, they might have all the periods, 7 periods in one day, for about 50 minutes each. So that'll vary, and that'll depend, and that'll kind of change your experience as well. You might have meetings after school. Some schools have short days where you'll have professional development. There's an early dismissal, and students have professional development. You'll usually have department meetings sometime as well, and then you'll leave the class. leave the school at the end of the day. In a smaller school, it may be a little different. The teachers you interact with will be probably teachers in many different other subject areas, whereas in a comprehensive school, you're going to really get to know your department pretty well. Usually those classrooms are located in a close proximity with each other in the departments, and so you'll get to know your department teachers pretty well.
And those teachers, sorry again to interrupt, but I want to highlight this. So how many students are we talking about in a class at these schools? Teacher ratio, and then in the department, like various like ages of teachers, experience. Like I think from my experience, I taught at a public school, a small public school in Philadelphia, and we had a very wide range of people from the teaching profession that have been teaching 10, 15, new teachers, Teach for America teachers. So kind of like tell me a little bit about what that looks like at the ISIC schools.
So in our intensive support schools, especially the struggling schools, you're going to have class sizes that vary. Some of our schools have received grants and federal grants so that they can reduce the size of their classes. So in some of these schools, you might have classes sizes of 20 or less.
Wow.
But in other schools that might not have received that kind of funding, you might be looking at class sizes of closer to 30 or 40.
Wow.
Some of it depends on what grade level you teach. 9th and 10th grade level, and then middle school tend to have smaller class sizes because there's extra funding, but 11th and 12th grade classes tend to be a little larger. So in those classes, you look 30 to 34 students.
Okay. We mostly place at the middle school level and at the high school level. I would say heavy on the high school level. So that's interesting too. I also want to welcome some of the new folks that joined us. Thank you guys for coming. I know that you probably hit some downtown LA traffic and didn't know where to park and all those things that I'm sure the first time you come down here, it's crazy. But we have some people online. Feel free to eat. Feel free to start formulating questions in your head. We're going to have an interactive portion of this where you're going to be able to ask questions in real time. And so right now we're just we went over charter history, district, a little bit more about district placement and kind of where our teachers are going to probably teach, and they tend to be in his network of schools or in the greater network of ISIC schools. And so I want to shift now a little bit. We talked a lot about districts, and I think it's only right that we talk about charters as well, because the majority of our placements this year are going to be in charter schools. It's been that way for the last several years, not necessarily because of a desire to only, or because we see that charters are the place to be. Some of most charter schools that we place with, I would say all charter schools are good places for teachers, but we have also been kind of forced to place charters more than district because districts have been dealing with a lot of budget issues. And so we're very honest and clear when we say we want to serve the highest need kids in the highest need populations, and those tend to be majority in districts. So full disclosure, if we could place more in districts, we would, but there are also some amazing charter schools that we place with that are doing amazing things. And so I want everyone to know that, like, when we place you somewhere in Los Angeles, you're going to where you are seen as making a huge impact and where a community really needs you. So with that kind of little segue or conversation I just put out there, I want to talk about your experience working as a charter school administrator and kind of like being firsthand, like witnessing firsthand the growth of charter schools and being on boards of charter schools. I know that we've talked in the past about that. Tell us a little bit about where charter schools like started, how they started, why they started, where they're going, kind of the challenges, the exciting parts of being in a charter school. Like, just tell us a little bit about the movement and where we're at currently.
I guess starting from the beginning, so I have a background in teaching. I was a teacher in the first Alliance Charter School, Alliance College Ready Public School charter school, and then I became a principal in the Alliance. Prior to that, when I was earning my PhD and doing a postdoc doing education policy research, I did a lot of research about charter schools. So I've kind of seen the history of charter schools from the very beginning when they were first created nationwide. And in California as well. I think it's easy to get caught up in a lot of the politics around charter schools, and I definitely don't want to go in that direction with this conversation. I think what's more relevant for most core members is really thinking through just knowing that when people, for the most part, start charter schools, it is with the right intentions, and I can definitely speak from my experience with the Alliance, is that the board and those who have started charter schools really have the intention of really providing an alternative for students and to serve them well, and to provide them with another option that is hopefully better than what their current options are in the public school arena. Charter schools really exist as another option. They're schools of choice. And by that, I mean not just for students, but for teachers and administrators as well. No teacher is required to ever teach in a charter school. They choose to teach at the charter schools. And nobody's ever placed at a charter school. And just like students, the students and parents choose. And they are public schools, meaning that they receive public dollars. And so they are held accountable by their chartering authority, which districts, depending on which district they're in, LA Unified happens to have a lot of charter schools. And because of the state charter school law, the local districts are the ones that generally have to grant the charters based on the law.
Yeah, so a charter is a document.
It's actually a document
that outlines like what the school is all about, like
right.
how they're going to make all these things happen at the school. Right. And once they submit the charter to the district and the districts agree to authorize that charter school, they get authorization for up to 5 years. Right. So in those 5 years, if they don't follow through with what they kind of outlined in the charter, and if they're not a successful alternative to as they initiated when they petitioned for the school, then the district will and can revoke their charter. So that's where the oversight comes from when we talk about it being a public school and being held accountable by an entity. And in this case, in LA, it would be LA Unified is the accountability buddy here. So yeah.
And so that's definitely tip number one. If you are going to work in a charter school, ask for the charter and read it. That's the organization that you are committing to work for, and so it's only right that you know what you're signing up for, what the organization is. A lot of charter schools tend to be pretty small, but there are some, those are called startup charter schools. Most startup charter schools that didn't exist before tend to be pretty small schools. But there are convergent charter schools as well, which I don't think we really place them together.
Very few, yeah.
There are some very large convergent charter schools that were existing traditional public schools. Mm-hmm. Granada Hills is one of them in LA Unified. Granada Hills Charter High School was an existing LA Unified school, and then their staff voted to become a charter school. So they converted the whole school, and it's one of the largest I think it might be the largest charter school in the nation.
Oh wow!
They have over 4,000 students or something like that.
Is that Inglewood? Is it Inglewood?
It's in the North San Fernando Valley.
What about parent trigger? Tell us a little bit about like a parent.
Yeah, that hasn't happened very much. So there is a parent trigger law in California where if a certain percentage of the parents vote that they would like to pull the parent trigger, then the district would be required to offer up that school for an outside organization or to reorganize the school.
Okay, cool. Because you might have heard of parent trigger, or you might have read an article. So I want to make sure you understand that that's another thing that exists out there. But
yeah. So for charter schools, working in a charter school, it's in a lot of ways not that different than a traditional public school, except for the size. So for the most part, I think TFA places in the smaller charter schools, the middle and high schools, and so it is going to be a very small environment. You're looking at 300 to 400 kids at the school, maybe 500 at most. The staff is going to be fairly small. Generally, charter schools ask teachers to sign off on an annual teacher agreement. That's different than a traditional public school where you usually have to sign up a contract and then you earn tenure and you're part of a teachers union as well. There are some charters that are part of teachers unions like Green Dot. So if you go to Green Dot, you'll be a part of a teachers union. But if you go to the Alliance or ISEF or PUC, you won't be a part of a teachers union, and you'll just be signing off on an annual agreement every year. Again, another tip for you, if you do work at a charter school, read your agreement cover to cover and make sure you understand what that agreement is asking you to do. Yes,
if
and ask
you don't
questions.
understand.
I can't tell you how many times, so as a principal, I hired a lot of teachers, and I can tell you how many teachers didn't bother to even read the agreement. And it's important. This is what you're signing up to be doing, and you're being held accountable for doing. And if you don't follow those things, you could lose your job, or you could face some serious sanctions from the state teacher credentialing agency if you don't follow through with some of those things. So working in a charter school is, in a lot of ways, pretty similar. I mean, you'll have your class of students or your classes of students. You'll probably be teaching things pretty similarly to other traditional public schools, especially in the schools that we place in Teach for America.
Why would teachers choose to work at a charter school?
A lot of charter schools have a very focused vision of what they want for their students. And I think that's one of the things that really separates some charter schools from traditional public schools. There are some traditional public schools that have a clear vision as well. But what we've seen is, the Alliance College Ready Public Schools, the name implies that it's about college ready for all the students. So a lot of the theme and the vision for the school are focused around that. So there's advisory classes where teachers can meet with students and actually get to know them and support them in preparing for college. But traditional public schools have advisories also.
Mm-hmm.
The class sizes may be a little smaller in the charter schools. I guess the charter schools oftentimes have a theme as well. Some traditional public schools have themes too. But a lot of the charter schools may have like a math and science focused theme or technology theme or health science theme. But there are a lot of theme schools in LA Unified as well.
And that's also, again, maybe has happened because of, taking some things that are really working at charter schools and things that are exciting and innovative and bringing them over and kind of infusing school districts, traditional school districts that maybe didn't do those things in the past. So those are some of the things that we mentioned earlier were kind of like replicated at the district level. And vice versa, things that work at the district level that then charter schools tend to adopt. So that's exciting. So also maybe there are some things about pay, performance pay. Is that something that's happening more at the charter level than the district level?
That's right. So a lot of charter schools in LA have been experimenting with different ways to pay teachers. I think one of the big challenges is that in traditional public schools you have a salary schedule. So you will know how much you're going to earn based on your number of years of experience and your education. And that's it. So if you are a science teacher, you will make exactly the same amount as an English teacher, as long as your number of years of experience and your credits are the same. In charter schools, very few of the charter organizations have a salary schedule. Some of them do. And then on top of that, some charters even have additional bonuses that teachers can earn on top of the salary schedule. Generally, the salary schedules for districts tends to increase every year for many years, whereas charter school salary schedules tend to increase and then level off after a while, so that because charters budgets are pretty limited when it comes to that. Another big piece about benefits in charter schools is that with LA Unified, at least, all of your benefits costs will be paid for, including your family if you have a family. In charters, charter schools tend to be use more of a sort of a private company arena model where they'll pay your benefits up to a certain amount, your health benefits up to a certain amount, and then after that, if you choose a more expensive healthcare plan, or if you have a family, then you may need to pay out of pocket each month.
And to clarify for those who are like maybe freaking out at this point, for health benefits wise, if you're an individual, a lot of these charter schools, if you're an individual, you'll be fully covered, dental, vision, and health. If you had a significant other, that person might also be covered under the health plan completely. Now we're talking about, having a family and kids. That's where we start seeing some major differences between LA Unified or traditional district schools and charter schools. So I want to make sure we're clear on that. I know from experience, because I worked at one of the large CMOs, that Alliance has a $700 amount. So anything above $700, you have to pay out of pocket. But based on their health benefits, 2 people would be covered fully under the $700, and then anything that would go over, you would pay out of pocket. So just give a bit of an idea there. That is important. I mean, we are living in this world, right, where we should be considering healthcare as well as everything else. So definitely, I want to ask you real quick before I forget about this idea. I hear this all the time from charter schools about, though, you gotta wear many hats.
Yeah.
What does that mean? So, talk about what it means to teach bell to bell, wear many hats, and kind of how that all works as far as like a charter compared to a district.
That is one of the differences in being a charter school teacher is that because the schools are so small and because oftentimes they are growing schools, they haven't been around a lot.
Yeah.
There are a lot fewer kind of set policies and procedures and ways to do things,
Yeah.
and there are oftentimes a lot of decisions that need to be made and a lot more support that's necessary because for a lot of these charter schools, if they're part of a charter management organization, there isn't as much support at the district level for the schools. So the expectation is that you can think of it as the difference between working for a startup company versus a Fortune 500 company. If you're in a startup company, you're going to be asked to do a lot of things. You're going to be asked to maybe help out with this meeting or help out with this club or help out with supervising students during nutrition and lunch. Whereas in a traditional public school with the union contract, there are a lot more limits on what teachers are being asked to do that are kind of limited by what's in the teachers union contract. To the extent that I know the UTLA, if you do end up teaching in LA Unified, go to the United Teachers of Los Angeles website and download the teachers union agreement with LA Unified. It's a very large document. You're talking about a couple hundred pages. But those are the rules that teachers in LA Unified are bound by. It details it down to minutes in terms of how long you can be asked to stay after school. I mean, it's really, really detailed. But again, that's what the agreement is. Nothing's preventing you from doing more.
Yeah. So this could be both exciting, right? Depending on the person, it might be something. A startup might be the right thing for you. Right. It tends to happen that we tend to bring in a lot of folks who are the startup type maybe that like to be exposed to multiple things, and so this actually I wouldn't consider necessarily a challenge, but it could be a challenge depending on how much they ask you to do, and so we want to always be mindful and know that we place you in schools that like these conversations are had between myself and Mira and many members of our team with our principals and saying like what are the expectations that we hold for the school in relation to the core member, and so we would never place you in a place where like there's too much for you that you can't handle. It is going to be extremely challenging, and there are going to be times where you're going to feel that way because teaching period feels that way. But just know that we are very purposeful in where we place you. We would never place you anywhere where it would be like, oh my gosh, I can't physically or mentally do this, even though you will feel like that. Full disclosure, on a lot of days because you're a new teacher and teachers feel that way. But yeah, I think that paints a pretty good picture. I know I want to be mindful of time. I think we have like 34 minutes left in the night, and I have been talking a lot. You've been talking a lot. Would love to hear from our beautiful faces here in the room. I'm sure they have a lot of experience already in many different areas and are now entering this new chapter in their life. I've been there. Maylin's been there. Derrick's been there. Chelsea's about to be there. Chelsea's joined the 2015 core in DC, so we're really excited for her. Really excited for you guys, but I want to open it up to the audience to kind of, and for those who are visiting us via live stream, we have about 7 folks here in the office in a really tight and hot room with Subway sandwiches who are eagerly waiting to ask questions. So would love if each of you can introduce yourselves when you ask a question, let us know what you're teaching content area-wise, and then where you're coming from, if you're a student, professional, and then let us know kind of what your question is. So we'd love to open it up. And you're going to ask your question, probably not going to be able to hear it on the mic, so I will repeat the question, and then we'll let Derrick see if we can get a response here. So feel free, anybody, start us off. The pressure's on.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matthew Albert. I'm a native of Cerritos, California. I'm a pharmacist who has been living in New York/New Jersey for the past year until moving back. Excited to be part of the 2015 TFA Core team. My question is in regards to the teacher's experience. So you talked a little bit, and I apologize for being late, stuck on the 110.
As long as you have a note, we're good.
I wanted to ask my question about the teacher's experience. So you talked about the district schools in terms of how it is a little bit in the traditional setting versus the charter schools and how it sounds as if because charter schools are able to exist, that there's more flexibility in terms of potentially how teachers craft their lesson plans or different types of techniques or strategies they can use that may be able to help students in terms of being able to teach more outside of the box as opposed to more traditional teaching methods. But I didn't want to make that assumption. So really my question is that really the case in terms of what is the difference in terms of the teaching experience that we would be experiencing if we were to teach in a traditional district school versus a charter school?
Based on my mic sound, and let us know if there's anything different here. You can let Chelsea know through the text box. It seems like we could hear you loud and clear. So I would. It was a long question, so I want to make sure Derrick has a chance to answer.
Sure. I think that's an excellent question to ask when you are placed at a school. What is the teaching experience, and what are the expectations for teachers at the school? Because honestly, I don't think I can really, there's an easy way to answer that question because it really varies depending on the school. So some charter schools are actually very prescriptive about what they want teachers to do and how you have to do things. Whereas some public schools are very open about, you have a lot of autonomy to approach it the way that you want to. So a lot of it is really dependent on the school and the expectations at that school. And the vice versa is the case too. There are some charters where teachers have a lot of autonomy, and there are some traditional public schools where it's a lot more prescriptive. I think at the secondary level where we place most teachers, there is actually a lot of autonomy for teachers to design units and lessons. It's not like the elementary level where there's a lot of, here's the script, you need to read this. That doesn't really happen as much at the secondary level. There aren't really curricula expectations like that, and especially since we're moving into the Common Core and implementing Common Core standards, there's a lot less in terms of resources available around that. And so what we're seeing right now, and there's been a lot of recent articles about this actually, is that we're actually putting a lot of the curriculum back into the hands of the individual teachers to make now. For better or for worse, because the publishers haven't really developed a lot of curriculum around Common Core yet. So,
and you'll know your students better than
right.
what a book or a curriculum can say, right? Like you'll know the needs of your students, and if there are more visual learners, or so it really depends on like what he said. Ask your administrator or principal or whoever's interviewing you even. Hey, like when they ask, do you have any questions about our school? That would be a perfect time to say, yeah, tell me a little bit about the way that you approach curriculum development or how you expect your teachers to teach.
I'm pretty familiar with most of the charter organizations and the public schools that you're placing in, and I'm not aware of very many of those schools that really kind of go overboard in terms of prescribing what you have to do.
Yeah.
There are some charters that I don't think TFA places in that are very sort of project oriented, that really don't have a regular kind of, you're going to this class now for high school, but it's just sort of a blend of all the classes.
Yeah, and we have blended learning schools too, right, that are digital campuses that don't have textbooks, that everything's digitally made, so like you'll be on the computer most of the day. Yeah. Your students will be on their computers in different stations. So there are schools, I would say a handful of them that we place in that do have and operate in that way. So the other thing I would say from my own experience in the classroom, and Derrick, correct me if I'm wrong, once you start teaching and you start proving that you're like pretty good at what you're doing, like you usually will be given a little bit more flexibility and like be able to make some of those decisions. But as a new teacher, a lot of times it's good to have a little bit of structure and a guide to get you through those first few months. And then when you start developing your own teacher voice and the way and getting to know your class, like I said, you'll be able to implement those new strategies. I think it's like anything that you do, any work that you do, it's about proving yourself and making sure that you're off to a good start, and then being a little bit more courageous and taking it to the next level after you know those things about your students. I will take a digital question or a digital question. I will take a online question from our live stream audience of 5 people. 5 people, okay, cool. And I can start by answering this question, then I'll refer to you from an administrator's point of view, but this question has more to do with teaching commitment. So the question is, does the school we're placed at have a commitment to keep us for 2 years, since we have a 2-year commitment? So from a Teach for America staff member who has these conversations with schools and writes the agreement that Teach for America has with schools, we do ask that principals, so the quick question is no, they don't have to keep you, right? If you're underperforming and if it's just not a good match, they will approach you as they approach every employee at the charter school level. And at the district school level, you're on a year-to-year contract until you are tenured, right? And I think it's 3 years in some of the districts. So in Linwood, it's 3, and LA Unified, it's 2. Or they might be both 2 years. But the short answer is no. It really depends on your performance. But what I will say is over 95% of our teachers get retained in their school site for the 2 years. It's very rare because we have conversations with schools. They understand you're a new teacher, that you're gonna it's gonna take time to develop you, and that they are also responsible for that, right? If you're not being successful, it really has more to do with the school and as well as your growth, and so they're responsible to treat you as a core member like any other employee that they would hire at their school and develop you and give you guidance and professional development and support you in your growth as a new teacher. So I wouldn't freak out about that answer because it's just an honest answer. But I know that Derrick, you've hired core members, you've had core members at your school site. They tend to, I would say, perform on par or beyond what a first-year teacher teaches or performs. So tell us a little bit about kind of that. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head when you talk about how no administrator wants to get rid of a teacher. I mean, that's not an ideal situation because that means they'll have to find another one. That takes time, that takes effort. And so for most schools and most effective administrators, and it's something that I coach our principal to do, is really we want those beginning teachers to get the support they need. And so some of the responsibility is on the new teacher to share with a mentor teacher or an administrator if you are struggling and what support you might need. But I know a lot of schools have developed systems to support new teachers. So they might have regular new teacher meetings once every couple weeks or so, where they meet with all the new teachers to that school and just talk about, hey, what's going on? Here's some tips and here's some hints and what questions do you have, what can we do to support you. I know some schools even assign mentor teachers to new teachers so that you might get assigned somebody who you could go to. So that's what actually happened to me at Long Beach. I was a brand new teacher at TFA and then they assigned me sort of a mentor teacher at the school who'd been there for a while, experienced teacher who I could go to first when I had questions about where's the copy machine, or how do I get more paper? I mean, some of it's sort of the basic stuff, but also it was about, how do you think I should teach this? I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think?
Yeah, and to be clear too, we will as an organization also be providing a ton of support, and so if we recognize or realize that you're needing more intense support than maybe some other folks who are off to a better start or have other challenges that might not need more one-to-one time, we will disperse our support to our core members when we hear from school sites or we hear from core members that they need more support. So you shouldn't have to worry about that. Like I said, over 95% of our teachers, that's not an issue. But it's human capital, and some people just don't work out, and that's okay. And if we deem that you're still really good for kids, we'll place you at a new site. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. But that's a really great question. I think it's a question that you should ask. Again, we'll try to do one online and one in person, unless we have a bunch in person and none online. So yes, tell us your name, content area, where you're going to be teaching, and then your question.
Okay. I'm Rachel. I am a senior at Yale, and next year I'm going to be teaching a science. I was assigned as a secondary school science teacher. And so I have 2 questions. First of all, I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about the hiring timeline and the general process for applying, and do we apply to districts versus charter schools, or is it one sort of application? And then second of all, about how we can connect to other TFA teachers while we're teaching next year. Is there a way that we can, connect to other teachers within our school or in other schools that are teaching the same content area as us?
So I hope everyone heard that question. There are many questions in one. I'll start from the last question of your questions. So you're most likely, and I'm not going to say it's a guarantee, but most likely you will be teaching in a school that has either an alum Teach for America teacher in there, or a second-year Teach for America teacher, or other first-year teachers. I could say that's a likelihood. I wouldn't say it's 100%, but based on the schools that we're going to partner with next year, I would say there's a strong presence or a presence of Teach for America somewhere in the building. And so where we can cluster people, we will. Like if a school wants to hire 2 people, it does make sense to have someone else that's going through a similar type experience as you. I know during my first year teaching, I had 0 Teach for America people in my building. No one even knew I was Teach for America. It's not something that, and I want to make that clear too. When you're a TFA core member, you don't have to go to school the first day of your school and tell everybody you're Teach for America. Not that you shouldn't do that either. It's just like you're a regular employee at every school that you teach at, and so no one's going to know. You're not going to wear a special pin that says I am brand new and Teach for America trained me for 6 weeks and I'm ready to go. So I never led with that. Now if somebody, after I built relationships and whatnot, if somebody asked me, I would tell them. So in my first year there was no TFA alums in the building because I asked around. And so I was like the first interaction that anybody in my building had with Teach for America. And so I had a lot right on my shoulders to make sure that they had a positive interaction. So once they figured out that I was TFA, a lot of them, more veteran teachers, were like, wow, like I had no idea you were a Teach for America. Like you're so different than what I imagined. And I was like, what does that mean? And so there's a lot of that. But it's also good when you have someone in the building that's also TFA because they have gone through that and they can give you guidance. And even regardless of TFA, I think there's new teachers that you can, cluster with and interact with because they're going to be facing the same challenges you're facing. It's just that you're doing an alternative certification program. You're going to school at night while you're teaching. They're also kind of like going down this slope, this mountain, snowboarding for the first time. I always use that analogy. It's kind of like the first time you snowboard, you're like, how do I do this? And it's going down the mountain a bunch of times to figure that out, and I think other new teachers are doing that as well. Now, as far as hiring landscape and hiring timeline, I would love to welcome Maylin really quick. I told her I was going to introduce her to everybody tonight online and in person, and I'm going to put her on the spot for 2 seconds, but she has a little bit more information about hiring timeline, and she's the person who's in charge of that. So if you could just repeat that portion of your question, and then Maylin, if you just want to roll over here really quick, that'd be great, and we'll just get you a spot for a couple minutes. Weird. All right, so you're almost in camera view. There you are. Hey everyone, Maylin in the house. So ask that part of your question one more time, and then.
I don't remember exactly what it said, but basically, I just wanted to learn more about the hiring timeline and process and what we have to do in general to apply to schools. Like I know we have to create a resume and cover letter and basically how schools will then contact us. Like, do we have to submit our information to individual schools, or does TFA submit that to schools?
All really good questions.
Excellent questions, and it's a perfectly timed question because the hiring season actually kicks off on Monday. So as Leandro mentioned, I'm your hiring manager. My name is Maylin. Let me answer your question directly first, and then I'll give you all some additional context on what's happening with hiring. So our timeline goes such that the earliest hiring opportunities that will be available for core members will start in mid-May, around the week of May 11th, and it will continue on throughout the month of May. So about a 3-week window where school leaders will reach out to me to invite individual core members for interviews at their school sites. And those interviews could look something like, when you think of a traditional interview, a person coming into the office and interviewing with a principal one-on-one, or with perhaps a panel of administrators and teachers and even students at a school asking a teacher questions or teacher candidate questions. They may ask you to do a demo lesson during that visit as well. So there will be one-off invitations for those things, and I'll be the person coordinating all those opportunities. Additionally, there are opportunities during a hiring event. So this is sort of like a large-scale speed dating sort of thing where a bunch of school leaders are present with a bunch of core members, and same process. They look through a book of resumes and profiles that all of you generate, and then based on who captures their interest, we set up interview opportunities for you all. Does that make sense?
Yeah, what is that speed dating event?
That's not until June 2nd, which is during induction, the very first week of induction. So those are the 2 big opportunities. And then for anyone that's not hired by the end of that induction hiring event, there will be additional opportunities throughout the summer through virtual interviews while you folks are at Phoenix Institute, and then as well as when Institute ends and you all return to Los Angeles. I'll continue scheduling interviews for anyone that hasn't yet been hired And folks are entering the hiring pool at different points due to their testing status, CSET and CBEST clearance. But we want to make sure that we prepare you all for the interviews as early as possible and support you through that process.
Can you tell us about the first offer first? I know I'm putting you on the spot, Milan.
Sure.
I think you're doing incredible, by the way. Can you tell us about the first offer first? Like you have the first offer policy?
Sure. So you are expected to say yes to the very first school that makes you an offer. And we do this because there's a lot of trust and faith that goes into the entire process of how we do hiring. Leandro and Mirla do a really wonderful job cultivating relationships with the partners in our hiring landscape. You saw all the different charters and districts that we work with. We are confident that every single one of those schools that we partner with has students that need every single one of you. So because of that, no matter who it is that you interview with, you know that you are needed and you're going to do a wonderful job. Because if they make you an offer, that means that they see you as a fit for their school. They see you, they can picture you teaching their students and their communities. So that's a really big deal, and that's an honor. So out of respect for all of our different wonderful partners, we want to make sure that we set that precedent that, our core members are delighted, our core members are humbled, our core members respect the fact that they've been given this wonderful opportunity to work at their schools.
And Malin, you just put that like so beautifully, and I'll add a little bit to that. It's not as beautifully, but I'll try it.
Okay.
This is a very and truly selfless moment in your life, okay? So you need to approach hiring in that very same light. We're not going for your best interests here at every step. You're going for the best interests of kids. And when a principal sees you, they see you in front of their kids, like Malin said, and they have a better idea of what that looks like than you do, a teacher who's never taught at that school, right? And so think about that when we're going through institute induction. I'm hopeful that you're already thinking about those things. This is a selfless moment in your time. Like you got to pick what university you went to, right? Or hopefully you got, you've become successful in every adventure that you've undertaken, and that's why you're here, and that's why we're entrusting you, and schools are entrusting you with their students, right? Because you are the type of person who can really make some awesome gains in the classroom. But know that, like, also, very, very basically, if we were to leave it to core members to then be able to say no, yes, no, A, that would feel really funky, right? For a core member to be like, actually, I don't want to work at your school, right? And B, it would be a nightmare, logistically, right? If we had people interview and say no, yes, no. So it doesn't make sense logistically the way that we do it, but 90% of the reason why we're doing that is because of what Malin initially said and what I hopefully added in that first part of my answer. So know that this is a very selfless moment in your life, and we approach hiring that way as well. Cool. Anything else you want to add to that?
Well, having sat on the other side of the table and hiring people during the fairs and hiring core members that way, I mean, I know that the core members very rarely actually, that might have changed, but you generally don't know very much about the schools that you're interviewing with at all, besides maybe answering questions from the principal. It's usually the administrator who's interviewing you for the school, and there might be a chance for them to explain about their school a little bit. But you're not exactly going to have done a lot of research on each and every school you're interviewing necessarily. So you actually won't have a lot of information about that school, other than maybe the location and the theme and whatnot. And having been a principal hiring core members, I know it puts things in a difficult situation because you're making offers. And then from the administrative point of view, we know that the district, that TFA has this policy, so they will offer it to people that they feel they want to have their schools immediately.
Yeah.
So there is a competition among the administrators too,
yeah,
in terms of wanting to get the best person for the job. And so that also speaks volumes about who we hire.
Exactly, and so that speaks volumes on you guys because there's so much need that exists in LA, and you guys are a pipeline of teachers, a small pipeline, honestly. There's so much need, and so schools are going to be vying for your talent, and so we hope that you trust us as an organization, and you trust Mirla and myself in knowing that we're going to place you in a place that's A, going to need you, right? Kids are going to be needing you at these schools, and B, it will be good places for you to grow as a professional.
If I could add on to that as well, trust yourself, Teach for America selected you because they saw your potential to be able to be that transformative teacher for kids. And Teach for America is going to do everything in its power to make sure that you're all receiving the support you need, to make sure that you can, deal with some of the challenges that you may face, persevere through unforeseeable circumstances that come up in real time, but also really celebrate the successes that you're going to achieve with your students. Because it's not all drama and it's not all challenge and crazy obstacles, right? Like, sure, that might be part of the experience, but a lot of it is just really reveling in the fact that you are working with kids every single day and putting them on a path to college. So just trust that you're going to be able to learn how to do that. You already possess a lot of skills and experiences that equip you to be able to provide that excellent education for kids, and you're going to accelerate your growth as a transformational teacher as well through our program.
And Madeleine's taught both at district or been
I've
both
worked
district and
at
charter.
districts, charters, I've worked internationally, I've worked here locally, so yeah.
A lot of perspective.
A lot
And
of
you'll be
perspective.
in
Administrator,
dialogue.
teacher.
Yeah, Madeline will be a key player in hiring, and so I'm sure you'll have many conversations with her about these same subjects. I think we
Had another part of the question.
Oh, you had another part. Was there another part?
Yeah, there was a part about connecting with other core members.
Sorry, we brought Derrick. So he's a very good listener.
So I don't know that there are necessarily like structured, like Google Match sheets to like a list of everyone's like contact information that necessarily goes out. I don't know about that per se. That would be something the teacher leadership and development team would be able to point you to. But we do have plenty of opportunities for core members to be able to network, to collaborate. You're going to become each other's best friends at Institute. Whether you like it or not, you're going to love each other and work with each other and figure it out, and you're going to continue to collaborate during your teaching experience. You might be working with folks at your school site. You're going to work together in professional learning community settings where folks meet like once a month on Saturdays to receive professional development. So there will be tons of opportunities for you to be able to collaborate.
Yeah, TFAnet is another way that teachers are collaborating as well.
There's we have a database. I think he's referring to our database of, and I honestly, I don't know if I could have done it without it. The database that was provided to us, it's pretty much like a Google search engine for lesson plans, materials, worksheets that were already made by other core members all over the country for teaching the same subject, right? So if I was teaching Death of a Salesman, I was like, oh my God, how do I teach theme in Death of a Salesman? And then I would be like, Death of a Salesman theme. And then like 1,000 things would come up. I'd be like, thank you, Lord. I got my lesson plan for tomorrow. So definitely like something you're going to rely on, and there's a ton of resources online. You are one of millions of teachers, right, that exist, so you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You just need to get some of the stuff that's already been created, make them better, adopt them to your school, your kids, and then push your practice that way. But survival mode is real, and sometimes you just got to Google and get those worksheets and whatever to make it through the day.
TFAnet is a great resource. I wish I had that when I was a teacher and a starting teacher. So that's going to be one that's sort of the first starting point. But I would also like to add that you are entering a broader profession. You're not just a Teach for America corpsman. You're not just a teacher at a school in LA. You are a science teacher in the United States, and each subject area, no matter what you're teaching, has a professional organization of its own as well. So I was a science teacher, like you will be, for high school as well. So there's a National Science Teachers Association that I highly encourage you to join, because you are a part of a national movement, and there are national conferences as well as state conferences where science teachers get together and talk about best practice, and you learn from each other. And they have web resources like what we're talking about as well. And so TFA is, I think, the great first start, but you are also part of a broader profession that also has, and that's the same for English teachers, special ed teachers, bilingual education teachers. There's a professional organization for everyone and for every subject area, and I think those are also a great resource that you can tap into too.
Yeah, that's real, because we make up 0.1% of the teacher force in the United States. Teach for America does. It just sometimes feels like we're bigger because there's so much conversation about Teach for America, but there are some amazing people in your school building who are not Teach for America. There are some amazing administrators who weren't alums. These are people you're going to want to lean on, and these organizations are places you're going to want to tap into because they're doing amazing things, many of which we then adopt and kind of model after their practice. So good point there. Thank you so much. I think we fired off a very I think we struck a chord with the folks online because there's a lot of questions about hiring here. One question is, I work a 9 to 5. how will that affect my interview process?
Great question. I don't have an answer for you right now, but we would definitely figure out a way to be able to coordinate, mutually convenient time for the two of you to be able to interview.
Schools are flexible. I mean,
Schools can be
like
really flexible. I mean, we
principal-
can figure out if we had to do a Saturday interview, we could definitely pitch that to a school leader to see if they'd be open to something like that.
or night.
Or an early, like an early morning interview and a late evening interview.
Skype.
Yeah, Skype interviews.
You're going into a high need area. It's principals, it's one of the most, if not the most important thing that an administrator does at a school is hire the teachers. And they will do anything to get the best teacher possible.
We literally have, I get hundreds of emails during the hiring season of people who we can't partner with because they didn't meet our criteria or because we only have a certain amount of core members who want to hire a teacher from our core members. And they really will go beyond what's necessary. I had one of our principals said that she could interview this person at 8 o'clock at night, at 10 o'clock because this person was on the East Coast and had some other thing they had to do. So she was willing to do whatever it took. 5 in the morning, she's like, I just need to speak to this person because I saw her resume and she's incredible and I see her as a perfect fit. I just need to meet her. So principals are as excited as I'm sure you are to interview. They're excited to see you and hear about you and learn from you because, like you said, this is a huge investment, and the most important investment that they make in their school community is being able to put together a staff that's really going to make that change happen for kids. So awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that question. What is the likelihood, this is the next question, what is the likelihood that we'll be placed in a charter versus a district? Now, I'll speak a little bit to it, but I will tell you that we are a small but mighty core this year. We are going to be placing nearly 90 teachers. So think about what that means. We have 7 people here. You guys are almost 10% of our teacher core. That is both heartbreaking and awesome at the same time. Heartbreaking because we could place 300 teachers easily in LA, and that's how many teachers there are, and that just means that there will be a lack of a pipeline for our schools. But with that smaller cohort, we can do things more efficiently and effectively, and hiring is one of those things. Now, charter schools tend to hire any content area, right? Math, science, SPED, Spanish, social studies, English, ECE, or ECE is more of a different placement. But all the content areas that we have in our core, charters tend to hire. Now districts tend to be a little bit more constrained based on content area. So this year we've identified or heard from our school district partners that they want to hire or can only hire STEM and SPED. Okay, so if you're a STEM, meaning math or science, or a SPED teacher, there is a chance that you will be part of the district landscape. If you're a science teacher or math teacher, there's a high chance that you might be a charter teacher. So I would say the likelihood for SPED is higher to be at a district school, and charter and district tend to hire math and science equally. So it really depends. But all other content areas will most likely be at a middle school or a high school in a charter school. I hope that helps. To give you an idea, numbers-wise, we're aiming for about 40 to 50% of our placement to be in a district school. So that means 45 teachers will be teaching at a district school. That's our goal, right? We want to hit that goal because, like we mentioned earlier, more teachers or more schools that are highest need are in district schools than in charter schools. Does that make sense? So Linwood, LA Unified, and Santa Ana might be those homes, and those other networks that we mentioned might be the homes of charter schools. Yes, sir. Question in the audience.
Apologize for being late. My name is Derrick Chau, and I currently work at City Year, and I would be a special education teacher, K-12, where we're at. My question is, I hear a lot about the need versus district and charter. What are the differences in structural supports from a charter versus in the district? And I know TFA is going to provide their own support, but what does that look like from the administrator's perspective?
A lot of it depends on the school, and that's definitely, again, another question to ask when you are interviewing as well, is kind of getting a better, because it's sort of like a marriage. It's sort of an arranged marriage. You want to kind of get to know each other pretty quickly. So whatever questions that you can ask that you have questions about, absolutely. It varies from school to school. Some of the larger comprehensive schools may have a lot more administrators. I think that is one structural difference in larger public schools, comprehensive public schools, is that, in a large comprehensive high school like the ones that I've supervised, there might be one principal, 3 or 4 3 or 4 assistant principals, a handful of coordinators, a whole team of counselors. It's a large group of people that you can kind of work with, as well as the department. The science department might be very large, or the special ed department might be very large, a dozen to 20 or 30 teachers. If you're looking at a small school, and I think that's actually more of a difference, is large school versus small school, versus charter versus district school. If you're going to a small school, whether it's a district school or a charter school, smaller schools tend to have fewer administrators for obvious reasons, budgetary and otherwise. There might be one principal, there might not even be an assistant principal. Some schools of 500 or less are lucky to have one assistant principal. They might have one counselor or 2 counselors, and that's about it. And then there's office staff, just like at a large comprehensive school. So the amount of support you'll get will depend on who those administrators are. In a lot of the charter schools, I know, especially in the charter management organizations that TFA places in, you'll get more observations because the teacher evaluation process requires that the administrators go and observe the classes a lot more. That's changed in LA Unified. We have a much more robust evaluation system, so administrators are expected to go and observe teachers a lot more now, but that may change depending on the union negotiations and whatnot that are happening currently. But as of right now in our system, administrators are going into the classrooms quite a bit more and observing teachers and providing feedback to teachers as well. But that's a relatively new thing in the large district schools. And in the charters, it's been a little bit more common to have that kind of requirement that newer teachers get more observations. Yeah.
So you have a follow-up question, Darius? Go ahead.
So
This is the last question, by the way.
Hopefully you can. So then talking about looking at tenure versus district school and looking at the evolving contract at a charter school, is there more of more pressure on principals to observe us in the classroom from the first 18 months versus what does that look like observation-wise and sort of administrative support observations at a charter school?
In a district school, it takes you about 2 years to earn full tenure, in LA Unified at least. And usually that decision is made at the 18-month mark, like you said, so a year and a half. So at the end of the second semester, at the end of the first semester of your second year, the administrator will have to make a decision. There's another decision that's actually made in the second semester of your first year. As a probationary 1 teacher, where the administrator has to decide whether or not you get to stay in the district and continue into your second year. So there's sort of 2 points in time, at least in LA Unified, where administrators have to approve or not approve you to move on as a teacher. Once that 18-month mark happens in LA Unified and you get a check mark saying you get to move from probationary 2 to permanent status, then you will be tenured after the end of that second year. So yes, for the expectation is that administrators are observing those teachers a lot more because they have to make those decisions. So certainly we would expect, and I expect my principals that I supervise to be observing those teachers, and in some instances I go along with the principal to observe those teachers to talk about it. Charter schools, they're annually having to go through that process. But I know some schools, like the public schools, have moved away a little bit from that more rigorous evaluation process and have made it a little bit more differentiated. So maybe they observe the newer teachers more, and maybe the more experienced teachers a little less, even though everybody's on the annual contract. Yeah. So it depends on the charter organization.
It's a great question, Darius. I think we've reached our time. Yep, 7 o'clock. I want to be mindful and respectful of Derrick's time, of y'all's time. Thank you guys for joining us, and also people online. It's 7 o'clock. I know that you still might have some questions that you need answers to, or you might think of some questions when we log off. We are here every day. You have our email inbox. Let us know. I know Derrick every year makes himself available as well. If there's a question you would like to ask Derrick, send it our way, and I'll make sure he gets it and responds to it. He's always very generous with his time. We thank you again this year for joining us. The third year, right? You'd be a junior in high school right now. And Hopefully we'll have you back for many years to come. I think your perspective is so valuable. Thank you again for joining us this year in this conversation cafe style with new friends coming in midway. We roll the punches. That's what teachers do, and once a teacher, always a teacher. So thank you, Maylin, also for joining us. Big shout out to Chelsea in the house for all her work on LA Info and answering all your questions for Area Corners. I'm sure you're the rock star. So big shout out, big hug to Chelsea, who you cannot see. I do this every year. I want everybody in the room to come to the front so that people who are still online can see you. So come on up. We're just going to say hi. It's recorded. I know.
That's true.
Yeah, or actually, here, you guys stay where you are, and then we'll go to you. How about that? Woo!
That's a good idea.
You already guys give me ugly looks over here. Your students are going to do the same thing. You're going to remember this. Wave at everyone back home and back at their homes in different parts of the country. Derek's over here. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for committing to kids. There are so many kids, thousands of kids here in LA that are so much waiting for you to become their teacher and be their mentor. You guys energize our work every day. We love you, and we can't wait to meet you all on induction, and good luck on your exams and different action items you have. Signing off from Los Angeles, the DSP team, and some of our corporate friends. Thank you guys so much.
Yay. Chasing you.
Hold on, let me just stop the recording.